This episode is brought to you by Never Second. Never Second is a system of fueling products formulated specifically for endurance athletes that provides a blueprint for success by allowing the athletes to test, optimize, and perfect their fueling and hydration. They take the guesswork out of performance fueling. I personally use Never Second on all of my training runs and my races, and I have no GI issues, and you know exactly how many carbohydrates you're taking in based on the names of the products themselves. If you want to try Never Second out, go ahead and use code SUBHUB25 to get 25% off of your purchase. Welcome to the SubHub podcast. I'm EmKay Sullivan.
And I'm Dani Moreno. And today we are going to be chatting with Karina Carsolio, who is a runner based out of Mexico. But before that, just wanted to do a quick recap of what happened this past weekend and the things that are coming up. So if you haven't already, please check out all the great content that EmKay pumped out during Mammoth Trail Fest week. It's on our Instagram. Also, thanks to everyone who is now following our Instagram, share, comment. We're loving getting more followers on there, since that usually lets you know when we're dropping a new episode, or if we're at a race, we're getting interviews and stuff like that. But for me personally, I'm sure it was the same for you, EmKay, but the whole weekend was just super fun. I had to leave early, and I was sad to leave, which makes me, it's a good feeling to feel like that. And I was just taken aback that it's its second year. And I think there was already like 1,500 runners through the various races.
Yeah, I think he said something like just over 14,000 people finished, which is insane.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was just a party. Tim puts on a great event. And so if you are looking for a race in the end of September next year, hit up Mammoth Trail Fest. It's a wonderful time with lots of donuts, lots of really encouraging aid stations.
Yes.
And plenty of beer.
Yes, definitely. Plenty of beer. There was a beer mile at the end of, it was an unofficial fourth event of the festival weekend. Also there's a kids race, so maybe there's 5 events.
Yeah.
But yeah, super fun race. So check out that content. Mountain Outpost did a great job, and they did a collaboration with Run Free Trail, and EmKay got to do a lot of commentating there. So that was super fun. With that being said, Mammoth Trail Fest was the last stage of the Golden Trail World Series for this year. This year there were 6 races. And so with that, the standings are finalized, and the top 30 are now invited to the final. So we now are officially in championship season, which is very exciting for all those athletes who have put so much time and effort into committing to one series. You see some athletes dabbling in multiple series. This is their time to shine and hopefully solidify those final standings. There's a handful more races too for those trying to qualify for the UTMB races. If you don't know already, if you aren't already qualified, you have until December 31st to try and get an auto qualifier. You could still be collecting stones for the lottery, but those races that are part of like the main series of UTMB, where you place top 3 in the 50K, 100K, or 100-mile distance, there's a handful of those left, including Kodiak in North America, as well as Puerto Vallarta. So we'll be covering those as well. But as far as these finals go, October is a super, super fun month. October 13th to 15th is the Valsier Mountain Cup final. It's a series of 3 races, uphill classic and long trail, right? Which kind of mimics the World Championship as well. Kind of format. And then the week after that is the Golden Trail World Series. We'll be pumping out some mini-sodes interviewing the athletes who have a potential to win there. That is October 19th, or the weekend of October 19th, because there's a prelude. And then the week after, we have the Sky Masters at Limon Extreme, and that is on October 28th. So yeah, that's
going to be a wild month.
Wild month. So to kick us off with kind of getting amped and excited for these final races, we have an interview with Karina. So if you want to interview Karina or introduce Karina, EmKay.
Yeah, absolutely. So Karina Carsolio is a professional mountain athlete for Black Diamond. She's based out of the Valle de Bravo in Mexico. She represented Mexico at this year's World Championship, and she is well known for her ability to navigate the gnarliest technical terrain. She's currently ranked 4th in the Skyrunning World Series. She has participated in both Golden Trail and Skyrunning over the years, and so we actually talked to her a little bit about comparing the two as well. She has been 3rd at Dolomites twice now, once in 2021 and 2023, and most recently won the Schleges 3000 Sky Race. Karina is also a doctor and works in herbal and nutritional gynecology and is very passionate about women's health and menstruation and running. We had a fantastic conversation with her about that I hope you guys enjoy. And we chat with her. She will be competing at the Sky Masters in Limon Sul Garda, and we are just excited to see how she does. The Sky Masters is the season finale, and it awards twice as many points as the rest of the races in the series. So make sure you're paying attention to all of that. And we kind of go through it with her to get a little bit more clarification as well. So enjoy our conversation with Karina.
Hey, Karina, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Hey, Dani, thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing good.
We are good. A little tired from the weekend, but we're excited to be chatting with you today.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. Yeah.
Where can we start with where you're located right now?
Sure. Well, I'm from Mexico, and right now I'm living in the town where I grew up, which is called Valle de Bravo. It's like 2 hours west from Mexico City.
That's awesome. And so have you always lived in Mexico? I know you were born there. I know you live there now, but didn't you live somewhere else in the middle as well?
Yeah, this is like, it's a small town where I grew up, and I kind of grew up with the same people for all of my childhood, and I was looking like I needed something different. So I have 2 uncles that live in Canada, in Calgary. So I went to live with them for high school. So I started high school in Calgary.
That's cool. How did that conversation come about? Because I know when I was a high schooler, I had no thoughts of I need to go somewhere else for high school.
Well, I guess I've always been like really rebellious and like have a lot of energy, and my parents were like, this town's too small for you right now, but I also hate the city, so I didn't want to go and live in a huge city. And I had a really close relationship with one of my uncles that lives there, and he told me to just go live with him. And yeah, so it was perfect because Calgary is like not such a huge city, and it has beautiful natural areas surrounding it. So it was a good option for me.
That's awesome. So can you start by telling us a little bit about your sport background? I imagine you haven't always been a trail runner your whole life. So let's maybe give the listeners like an idea of what you started with.
Sure. Well, my parents are both mountaineers. My dad is the 3rd youngest to climb the 14 8,000ers, and my mom's the first Latin American woman to climb Everest. And so I was kind of born into this nest of mountain people. I grew up in the forest and surrounded by very sporty people, and I grew up watching them like train a lot because they didn't really have like this training background. They would just like train for 6 hours straight, and I'm not sure it really worked, but like I grew up watching that, and they would take me out in the forest all day. Like for me, it was just a lifestyle to be out walking, hiking a lot in the mountains. And well, when you're a kid, you just run everywhere. So since I was little, I guess I've been trail running without knowing I was trail running. And I've, like every kid, I had a lot of energy, but I was very lucky to have parents that gave me an opportunity to put that energy into sports. So I did a lot of sports growing up. And then when I went to Calgary, I played field hockey there. and I loved field hockey. But when I came back to Mexico, it does not exist. So as a way of just like doing something about my energy, I just started running in the mountains close to home. And then one day my brother, he was actually the one who was starting to compete in trail running and sky running races. And he told me, hey, you should come one day. I think you would like it. And I did. So, yeah.
That's crazy. How old were you when that happened?
I was 19 when I went to like my first trail running race. Yeah.
You are the third woman that we've interviewed in the last like 4 months that has a background in field hockey. You, EmKay, and Tony.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I think Katie Shy too. We haven't interviewed her, but I saw her comment on one of our things with Tony. Yeah, I don't think that's just coincidence. That's crazy.
No.
Wait, so when you were in Calgary, this is in high school, you're playing field hockey. Calgary is pretty close to Banff as well.
Yeah.
It's just to the east of it. Did you ever go and venture over there and like run and hike and stuff?
Yeah, I did. During the winter, I used to go skiing there quite a bit with my uncle. And in the summer, I would do more mountain biking. Here, I grew up doing a lot of mountain biking, not much running. And so that's what I did mostly in Banff. Yeah.
So have you been competing in skyrunning since you were 19 pretty consistently then?
Not really, because like my first race, it was at the same time that I got into med school. And here in Mexico, well, in most places, but I feel like it was a lot for me. I had to live in Mexico City, which was huge for me. Like I had never been more than 2 days in Mexico City before in my life. And it was just insane. You know, there's 20 million people living there. And it was just like coming from a small town in the middle of nature and just being surrounded by concrete, noise, and cars. And it was just like brutal for me. And with the amount of studying that you have to do and moving to the hospital and such, I wasn't really training or had time to run races. So like I did it, but not in a very like professional way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting that you were experiencing your first sky running race. And so you were going to, and then I just want to make sure this is correct in my brain. You were going to med school at 19?
Yeah, here in Mexico, it's different. Like I think in the US and in Canada, you have to do like a degree before med school, right? Like something like biology or biochem or something like this, and then you do med school. Yeah. Here you can go like straight from high school into med school, and it's 7.5 years of medicine. I'm just like for a general physician, and then you can do like a specialty, right? So that's why like it was a young age to start med school, because you don't have to study like a degree before that.
Yeah, I know a lot of friends that would probably appreciate that.
Yeah. Seriously. And so when did you graduate from med school then?
3 years ago.
Okay. And then did you decide to do a specialty, or were you kind of like, I'm tired of living in the city, like I want to move back home, and then you decided to become a professional trail runner? Like run us through that timeline.
Yeah, it's mostly like the second one. So I was sick and tired of the city, and I didn't want to, like I told to myself, okay, I'm gonna give it like 1 whole year of just running and experiencing what that's like, because that's something I really wanted in my life. At the end here in Mexico, the way it works with med school, it's your last year, you do like your social service, and you have to go into a very small clinic in the middle of nowhere, and you're like the doctor of that small town. And so I chose this beautiful place in close to the mountains, but it also has a very strong community of midwives. And that's why I chose this particular place, because I was working with the midwives once I was done with working at the clinic I was at. And that's how I started working a lot more with women and like gynecology. And because these midwives have a lot of knowledge on herbal medicine and also like labor, like in a more natural way. And I kind of decided like, okay, this is great, but I'm also running a lot more. And I think I want to give it a try to like do more running. And that's the first time I ever, like once I was done med school, that I got a coach. And yeah, I just started training with him. And I was going to go like actually to the Azores championship. That was 2020, but COVID and such. So it just, now I'm like 3 years into my 1 year plan of just running.
Yeah. I have to imagine during that time, did you feel torn at any point while you're in med school, thinking maybe I should, just go and do running and come back to this? Or did you feel pretty settled and you're like, no, I'm going to finish this all the way through and then I'll do running afterwards?
Oh no, I was doubting myself every day. Especially because living in the city for me was so difficult, and being surrounded by people with whom I didn't really share the same kind of lifestyle or ideas, like people that were studying in med school with me. They weren't very sporty. They didn't come from a place where they had been in contact with nature. Most of them had been living in the city their whole lives. So I didn't really have much friends. And yeah, they all were like, oh, this hippie girl that studying medicine, but I actually managed it. My dad gave me a pair of rollerblades, and I would rollerblade from my home to the hospital and to the clinics I was working at. And it kind of turned the city into this like PlayStation kind of thing, So it was fun to move in between the cars with the rollerblades and just, yeah.
There's this movie called Brink. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I fully imagine you just taking on that persona, just like jumping stairs, taking rails, like somehow delivering pizza within like 5 minutes. And that probably wasn't the case, but just knowing like how amazing you are downhill, I have no doubt that like added another layer of fun to it.
Yeah, I think that actually helped my downhill skills, because honestly, now that I think back on the stuff that I was doing when I was rollerblading, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't kill myself.
And for you to say that, you must have been doing some insane stuff.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was fun though.
Rollerblading is life for sure. So we'll get to training later. I'm like so curious about just your medicine side of things. I know Dani, you and Dani have talked about this a bit when you guys were staying together for Skyrun, but tell us a little bit about La Atleta Integral and how that started and what exactly it is.
Sure. Well, like I was telling you, I started working with women during med school. I was doing like, at the same time that med school, I was studying with a bunch of midwives. I went to Peru for 2 months to study with a midwife there. And I just fell in love with this path of like working with women. And then I was also like giving a shot at being an athlete. So I started talking with a bunch of athletes here in Mexico that are mostly mountain bike athletes. And they were asking me about their periods and how they were not getting them. And I was like, okay, that's not normal. That's not healthy. So I started researching a lot about that and just stumbled into the whole research that Stacy Sims has been doing. And I ended up like taking her course and then talking with her about, like she would send me a bunch of extra papers, because her course is pretty, like it's not basic, but it's for like people that have not studied medicine. So I wanted more, like more scientific research. So I started reading a lot about that, and also talking with my coach about that, because he also studied medicine. He's a sports medicine. He said like the specialty he did was in sports med, and so we ended up like having these medical conversations about the whole theme. And I decided, well, maybe this is information that I could share. So it was COVID, and this whole Zoom thing had been like growing. So I decided to do this online course for women about periods and like healthy periods and being an athlete, and how it like the different effects it has on the body depending on the phase that you're in and such.
Yeah. Just our short time in Skyrun, I was sharing with EmKay, and it was just so cool. I felt like I was on like a women's retreat with you, with great food and conversation. It also is something that like I'm passionate about, and like admittedly don't always know how to like touch upon the subject and stuff, because for so many years it kind of was taboo for numerous reasons. And I feel that professional athletes, elite athletes, are getting better about like sharing their stories, etc., and so people can self-identify. Personally, for you, what do you think we can do better? Because trail running is growing so fast. And, I feel like we can potentially still get ahead of, that being such a systemic problem in the sport. What do you think we can do better for our sport to make sure that women have healthy menstruation or are educated about it?
Well, I think we need to get a lot more of the community involved. And by that, I mean like the brands that are behind the event, and the brands that are also promoting the like trail running. I think they should, the best tool is always information. So it's painful for me to see that a lot of the brands are not giving enough information about this, even though there has been like a huge effort on this. By this, I mean like, I was doing this documentary, like this short film about Red S and like so relative energy deficiency in sports and healthy periods, and like also unhealthy periods. I mean, I talked with you about this, Dani. You were going to go be in the film too. And
I was in it also.
Yeah, you were in it. And like the whole idea came about when I was working with an athlete that she hadn't had her period in 4 years, and we started working together, and she got her period after we started working together. And like, it was a follow-up of her story with a bunch of different stories of a lot of women. And then nothing happened. The whole film was made, like a lot of resources were put into making this film, and then it didn't come out. And it's not the only story I've heard. You've probably seen Meg McKenzie's post that the same happened to her. And I'm like, what the hell, guys? Like, you're doing all of this film, and then nothing goes through, and it's like, oh yeah, we don't think the public will be interested, or like, oh no, the brands are now different brands, so it's not going to work. And it's like this whole mentality of money, like if there's like, because they told me, no, we're not using it anymore because you switched brands, Dani switched brands, and a lot of different athletes that were in it switched brands, so now it's not useful. I'm like, what? That doesn't matter. Like, the information is what's valid. So I feel like brands it's difficult, but they need to put aside this part of like monetizing everything. Like, you don't want to monetize such an important subject as health, and just like actually put the information out there, in an easy and understandable, but also like appropriate way of communicating it to women.
Yeah. I'm just now remembering this film that you're talking about that you were putting together, because I was with Dani last year when you were talking like with her about it. And I was wondering what had ever happened to it, but now I know. And that's so unfortunate, because we know the same thing happened to Meg and Fanny with their film that they did with North Face. And like, you're right, that information definitely needs to be out there, because even in the track and field world, where it's been happening for years on like a systemic level, there's still not enough information or support to help women and even men get through these issues.
Yeah. It just made me think maybe we should just get it crowdsourced. That's wild. I mean,
We need a petition.
it's all hitting me again because Meg was here for around winter time, beginning of this year, and she mentioned she was working on a film, and I was like, oh, I'm also in a film. That's awesome. It wasn't like, oh, there's gonna be 2 films. I'm like, that's great. We need like 10 or 20 of these films just so it can like spread out as much as possible and have all these, tremendous athletes who have lived an experience. And it's vulnerable. I don't know during your conversations, Karina, but like mine, I got a little emotional because it's still in there from like that little younger Dani's experience, but it needs to be shared. But yes, glad you share that passion with us as well. Should we transition to training? I feel like we could talk a whole episode.
I know. Yeah, we probably should though.
Okay. Well, you mentioned that, what's it called? You got a coach when you started skyrunning. And I don't know, personally for me, I've done some sky races, maybe only one that's like, I would say a true sky race. So how was that conversation with your coach of, hey, can you train me for scrambling and descending down these treacherous mountains where there's sometimes chains because how did that conversation, what that selection look like?
Well, actually it's been interesting with my coach because he wants me to do more Golden Trail, he's more into trail running than sky running. He doesn't really understand why I want to put my life in danger like that. But I guess like I just kind of like I'm not as happy when I'm doing trail running as when I'm doing sky running. So he just realized that for me it's more important to keep enjoying what I love doing, and I was the one who ended up like switching. So he would like upload training on Training Peaks and like have, I don't know, put sometimes like 3 hours walking and I would just go scrambling, like, well, I'm still going slow, so it counts as walking. And he was like, okay, yeah, sure. So he ended up, like for this kind of training, I do like, I spend a lot of times in the mountains. But also I started incorporating a lot of strength exercises. Like before I would just do maybe once or twice a week of strength exercises. And when I started focusing more on sky running, I've been doing it like 4, sometimes even 5 times a week, like proprioception and strength training. And I've noticed a lot that even if my training is the same, like for trail, like uphill repetitions or like flat repetitions or whatever, like the strength training helps me a lot more when I'm like on rocks. And that.
Yeah, you've got some good elasticity. And I'm wondering, do you feel like the strength training helps you more with downhill than it does uphill, or do you feel like it's kind of a mix of both?
It's a mix of both, but mostly downhill. Like I've seen that before. I would end up like my quads would explode, and the next few days I would be super tired after a sky running race because the downhills is just so much impact. But after doing so much strength, like I can manage the downhills a lot more. And like in the sky running races where there's a lot of downhill and uphill, I'm like after even 4 hours of like doing that, I just still feel like I've got some muscle energy left.
Yeah, I can imagine, not just because the amount of time that you race is, in my opinion, significantly more than you'll see on 95% of the Golden Trail World Series races. So that coupled with, and this is just from watching the videos, but you're almost like doing like hops off of like granite and different types. You're like bounding down, which I would imagine feels so much harsher on the quads than Golden Trail. Is that safe to assume, like with that?
Yeah, for sure. Like in trail, you're like, it's the speed and you just have to like get your legs used to that speed on downhills. I'm sure you have to be like technical as well because you're going way faster, but here it's like, one of my favorite trainings that I do, it's like running uphill a dry river. So you're like literally jumping from rock to rock. And that's what you're doing in skyrunning. Like sometimes there's not even like a clear path or trail. You're just following like little orange flags and jumping around rocks. So it's a lot of bouncing and a lot of impact on the lower back, on the core and on the quad.
As someone who has like bird ankles, I'm wondering, do you tape your ankles like crazy when you run these races? Or do you just have like insane proprioception?
Well, I guess a little bit of both. Like, I think like that kind of like technical skills, sure, you can work them, but I do feel like with a lot, like the same with a lot of sports, but if you start at a younger age, your body has this like muscle memory and the elasticity and also the proprioception. So when I've been like doing this whole river thing since I was a kid and jumping around rocks. And, you know, I told you guys, my parents are mountaineers, so I would do a lot of rock climbing. So I also had that. I still do like a lot of proprioception, like at home. But I do tape my ankles like crazy.
That makes me feel better. I have to tape my ankles for like every race, no matter how technical.
Even the road races. Yeah. For our listeners, when you say proprioception in this regard, like to skyrunning, like what does that category of work look like?
Well, I do a lot, like when I'm at home, I have, you know, the bosu, the little ball that has a flat part. So I put like a circuit of like the bosus and different balls, and I jump around on those. And I do a lot of like side jumps or different kinds of all kinds of jumps. I also find like some rocks that I can like jump around on, and just getting used to the muscles of doing that, because that's what I'm doing like for 6 hours, right?
That's so cool. I'm sure like a lot of the internet has seen this video that Kilian Jornet put up a long time ago, where he's like jumping on the outside of his ankles, like as hard as he can. You don't do that, right?
No,
that freaks me out.
That. It freaked me out too. I was like, why? No, I do a lot of like ankle stabilization, like exercises, just like on like the bosu that moves around, but not jumping on my ankles like that.
Well, your training sounds super fun. That's for sure.
Welcome to do it anytime.
Yeah. Thank you. So as someone who, I honestly think there's a very small percentage of athletes like yourself who have competed at a high level in both Golden Trail and skyrunning. Having an experience in both of those series, what would you say are like the main identifying core values maybe of each series that kind of like stands out to you if you were to like sum them up?
Well, I think Golden Trail is moving in this direction, kind of like, you know, the mountain biking community, that it's doing like the circuit and this big final and like point system. And I feel like Golden Trail spends a lot on of its budget on having like an amazing field of athletes, and that's super cool to see. Like this year, the top 20 is like really difficult to get in, right? So that's really cool to see. But they don't invest much, from my point of view. Like they don't invest much time in making sure it's like the course is like this great course. Sometimes like it's just like, okay, let's just get the top, like an amazing field, and whichever race works will do the job, right? Whereas in skyrunning, I feel like they spend a lot more on making sure the course is like beautiful. Like even if you just have 5 or 10 top like elite athletes, like whole course, like even if you just go and walk it, like it's mesmerizing. Seriously, it's beautiful to do the course. So I think, and also skyrunning even smaller community than trail running. So you just end up like being this huge family with the organization and with the athletes and the cameraman and the camera crew. And so it feels like it was a road trip of athletes that want to be together, you know? Yeah.
My next question was going to be, what is the culture like at skyrunning races as opposed to Golden Trail? But it feels like you kind of already answered that. But if you have anything else to add, please do.
I do feel like skyrunning, it's more like people who like to spend a lot of times in the mountains and decided to race. Whereas Golden Trail feels a little bit more like professional in a way of like more serious athletes. I mean, we still have fun, right? You were saying that you, after this mammoth trail fest, you were doing this beer chugging race. So like it's still, I feel like it's still a little bit more lighthearted than other sports. But yeah, I just feel like people who have spent so many hours in the mountains have a different kind of approach to the sport. And in trail running, it's a little bit more serious, I feel, even if it's still really friendly. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And for listeners who don't really know, I guess, much about skyrunning, a lot of the races that Karina does are very similar in distance to Golden Trail races, but they have a lot more elevation gain, a lot more technical terrain. So they end up taking like 6+ hours. So she's like truly spending a ton of time just like outside in the mountains. It's a very different game than trail running.
Yeah. I sometimes tell people that I feel like the same step, like, you know, from road running to trail running, it's almost the same from trail running to sky running. Like it's yes, you're running, yes, you're moving with your 2 feet, but it's really different skills that you need. And nutrition wise, it's also different. And yeah, like it's all of a different sport, I would say. Yeah.
I would agree.
I would agree with that. For when you say nutrition, my gut goes to like, do you start to consider including like more fats and stuff because you're out there longer? Or is it just that you're consuming more in general?
Sometimes like when it's more than 6 hours, I do start not fats, but more a little bit of protein or BCAAs, you know. So yeah, and also it's harder. Like you have very little aid stations compared to Golden Trail because it's hard for the organization to get food up to the mountains, you know. I mean, there's no trails going up the mountains sometimes. So people or the helicopters getting them up the mountains. So like in the last trail race, in the last sky running race I did, which was the Matterhorn one, it was 25K and there were 2 aid stations. And it took me like 5 hours to finish the race. So it's 2 aid stations in 5 hours. So you have to carry a lot with you. And like in Golden Trail, they've been incorporating the system that I think it's super cool, where you give them the food that you will need, the fuel that you will need, and they will have it for you at every aid station. So you kind of have like this personalized aid station. But in skyrunning, they can't do that. And so you just kind of have to like figure it out for yourself, and you end up carrying a lot more on your vest than you're probably used to. Yeah.
And you're also probably almost always bringing poles, I imagine, as well.
I'm not much of a pole fan because I also because you have to use your hands a lot. There's sometimes a lot of scrambling or chains and such. So you have to like be putting take all out and back in your poles. So I feel like for me it doesn't really work, but a lot of girls do use them like in the uphills. Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like I would also just break them because there's so many rocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like hit something. Yeah, I feel that when I see the aid station people, they're almost look like they're search and rescue aid station because they're always in like orange or bright yellow.
Yeah.
And it's just like, we're just here if, shit goes bad. No, but it looks incredible. Just a couple more notes on the skyrunning circuit. If you were to, try and pitch, to someone like EmKay and I, who are very much nestled in the trail running world, but are intrigued by the skyrunning world, how would you get an athlete like ourselves, or just the masses, to want to try skyrunning?
It's seriously like so much fun. Like from the beginning to the end, like previous and after the race, it's just a beautiful community. And I mean, we're all friends. Like, and the skyrunning, like the whole course, it's very well organized too. So you always feel safe, even if you're in the middle of like this huge couloir. But like they make sure there's a lot of safety. You're always like, even if you're hours in the mountains, there's always people, like what you said, Dani, like there's people with the bright vests and taking care of you, and they put ropes like whenever it's necessary. Like it's really safe. So I feel like it's a great way of approaching mountaineering without like actually having to be like climbing hard stuff or like taking your ice axe or like crampons, like it's a beautiful way of being hours in the mountains, feeling safe, and also going fast and competing with amazing people. So, and the views are just like no matter if you're like cramping, you're still looking at beautiful mountains all the time. So I actually think like maybe don't start like with a super technical one, but like something that's more runnable but fun, like the one I did in Austria, the Schligaze one. That's a beautiful, beautiful course. Like I think any trail running athlete would enjoy a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just won that race as well, right?
Yeah, I did. It was quite a surprise to actually be in front of Clementine. I was like, okay, something's going on.
No, well, that was a huge win, and not surprising to see you up there. Just one last question on the series, and then we want to ask you about like Mexico and the trail running culture there before finally transitioning to what is currently happening in the Skyrunning series. But if you were to recommend, you just mentioned the one in Austria, like a couple of entry level Skyrunning races for people to consider if they want to dip their toes in the water.
Yeah. Well, I think Dolomites, which is a Golden Trail, is not skyrunning, but like it is a skyrunning race, right? So skyrunning is anything in Europe that's above 2,000 meters above the sea level. So it's like, what, 13,000 feet, something like that?
2,000 would be above 7 almost.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, above 7,000 feet.
Okay. So that's like in Europe, that's considered skyrunning, and that you'd have to have like a lot of elevation gain. And at least 70% has to be either on trail or off trail. So not road or like big paths. And so I feel like Dolomites is a great approach because most of the uphill, it's not technical. Like you can run a bit. And then you have like this technical part, which is really, really fun, but it's short. So I feel like it could be a great approach to it. Also, this one that I just told you in Austria, because it doesn't have a lot of chains and stuff. It's just like granite, like huge granite blocks. So you can safely jump around on them and they don't move around as much. So it's a nice little taste of it. Yeah, and from the ones I've done, for like a little taste, that like the one in Stranda in Norway, that one was fun too, because it's not super, super technical, but it gives you a good taste of it. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So I love the not rocks moving.
Yeah. That's like my least favorite thing.
Jump on them.
Oh man. Well, so I know that you have been very vocal about how kind of Eurocentric trail and mountain running can be. And as we know how Eurocentric it can be, and you were born and raised in Mexico, and we're just curious, like, tell us a little bit about the running culture in Mexico. Is it new? Is it growing? What's the race scene like?
Yeah, well, it's not new. Like, it started growing a lot when Ricardo Mejia, he is a runner from a place what's called Oaxaca here in Mexico. He started he was Skyrunning World Champion 3 years, and he actually won Sierra Sinal 4 times. So he was before Kilian Jornet, he was the one who had the most amount of wins in that race. To this day, he still has the record of Sion Dixien, and he has a bunch of his curriculum is huge. So I feel like he was the one who kind of started to make sure that the world was okay, maybe there's something outside of Europe, And since then, there's been a lot of athletes that are really strong here in Mexico, and but it's just hard to get out. Even for Europeans or for people in the US, it's still a small sport, and to get sponsorship for it and to live off of the sport, it's still not a reality for most athletes, because there's still not much money in it to support so many athletes compared to other sports. But here in Mexico, it's even harder because most brands, when I was looking for a sponsorship before Black Diamond, I literally a lot of the brands told me, oh, we're not interested in Latin America. So no, thank you. So it's hard to get a sponsorship. And I was like, you do know I'm going to be racing in Europe. But they're they don't, I don't know what goes on, but that was literally their answer. And well, if there's no money, getting out to compete is hard. So for me, it was kind of this really small path that I had to dig to go to Dolomites and get a good result there. And then everything, I've been paying for my traveling for myself before being with Black Diamond. And I feel I'm very lucky and privileged to have been able to do so because of my work. But here, it's still what we call a developing country. So a lot of the basic needs are not met. We still have a lot of diseases that in most places in in Europe, they have been gone for years, right? And there's still a lot of poverty. And so if those basic needs are not met, why would people be interested in spending money in sports, right? Even though there's some amazingly strong people because of that. They move, sometimes a lot of the communities here don't have cars, and they go to their schools walking through the mountains, and you see this amazingly strong kids, and you're oh my God, you would be such an amazing athlete, but there's no resources for it, right? So the community is definitely growing. There's a lot of programs to help out these kids and maybe introduce them to racing and such. But I feel there's still a long way to go because it's parallel to the socioeconomical side of the country. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious, and I hate to even prop up UTMB because I don't think that that's something that should happen. But do you think that with the addition of series like UTMB bringing races into South America, Mexico, and kind of using those as ways to get into UTMB will help get people into the sport, make it a little bit more accessible? Or do you think that that's not what's needed?
I don't know how it's in the rest of the world, but the UTMB course that exists here in Mexico does not help out. Even for me, they were oh, we'll give you a number bib, and that's it. They wouldn't help out with travel expenses or anything else. And even if for me that I have a sponsorship and a job, it's still maybe I won't because it's a lot of expenses to go there. I imagine these communities that have to invest a lot just to get out of the community. I don't see them going to this race where they would have to pay for the bib, pay for ACOM, travel expenses, and then pay for even if they got a first place, they would have to pay for the expenses to go to Europe and all of that. So I just don't think that's realistic,
Yeah. And I imagine that the places that they're holding these races in anyhow are probably kind of expensive to stay in. So even if you can get there, it's like trying to find a place to stay is probably a bit of an issue as well.
Yeah. Like, honestly, I feel like it's a sport that's still just for like a socioeconomical, like part of the society that's here in Mexico. It's at least a small percentage. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. It would be cool if they could implement some sort of local program that wherever they put a race, because that is impacting those communities in various ways. If they're like, hey, we're going to give out 50 free bibs and travel to, people that are in the area, and hopefully maybe the race could pick too. That would be most ideal because they're more interested in or have more education on the runners in the area. Just out of curiosity, as someone who I've only raced in Mexico once, and it was just such an incredible experience. I loved it. It's like top 5, one of my favorite races. What are some of your races that you would recommend for people to check out, to go and see the culture there?
For sure. Yeah, that's for sure. There's this one race called Desafío en las Nubes, which translates to like challenge in the middle of the clouds. And it's kind of like it's a technical course, but also running. So like if you're interested in something more technical, it's super fun. But what makes it very, very special is what you just said, Dani. Like the organizer of the race made sure to involve the community. So it's takes place in this small community that's called Jicotepec de Juarez, and it's a community that dedicates to like coffee and ginger. So their whole mountains are filled with coffee and ginger production, and they have a lot of different trails because they move around with their donkeys, collecting coffee and ginger. And the organizer like made sure the community was the one who like made the event special. So they give out coffee and ginger, and the trails are beautiful. Like there's waterfalls everywhere, and it's kind of jungly, kind of like Jurassic Park themed. And you're in the middle of the clouds. Like it's this place that has a lot of humidity. It's a beautiful course, and the whole communities, like the different communities that live around where the race takes part, come out of the streets and just cheer you on so much, and filled with children. And the impact that this race has had on the communities is just like it fills me with hope, because now that there's like this group of women, like not even women, like kids, like they're 12, 13, 14-year-old girls that just decided that we're going to form a group and go train in the mountains together. And it's so beautiful to see that. And there's been a lot more of like healthy tourism, like sport tourism going on that place. So, and it's super well organized. It's like, yeah, one of the most beautiful courses I've ever done. So that one, it's in February. So it's also a good date for Europeans, because if they want to try something that's not, that's trail running and not filled with snow. And another one, it's in June, and it's in Oaxaca. So it's actually organized by Ricardo Mejia, the one I told you who won a bunch of skyrunning races in the past. And he makes sure that it's a party. So it's the same date of a regional party. Like there's a party of the different communities in Oaxaca, and they all get together and have like this cultural exchange. So they have a lot of like artwork and festivities going on, music and drinks, and it's seriously a party. Even if you don't go and run it, you will have a blast. And the race is also beautiful and very different, because it's a kind of desert, but like also some forest. So it's super fun. And that's the course that actually, if you win it, you get a pass to go to Sierra. So also there's that. Yeah.
Mezcal is like my all-time favorite drink. And so that would give me an excuse to go to Oaxaca.
No. And in that race, if you win, they give you like the best mezcal that I've ever had.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Oh,
well, we will definitely include those in the show notes and add it to our stories those are coming from you as recommendations. Yeah. I mean, you talking about the coffee and the ginger and those different areas and the community getting involved. The reason why I loved that Mexico race is like, it felt like I was entering a family. Like the race director's parents were making us food the night before. And then it was like his brother who drove us to the course to check it out. And it was amongst a bunch of agave fields. And it just felt so personal so quickly. So that's incredible. So thank you for sharing those.
Yeah. You guys are welcome anytime.
Yeah, I'm honestly I was writing these down as you were talking about them. And I just like to kind of expand on the issue, like the socioeconomic issue for a second. It's just like, I wonder if there is like a future where kind of like I know Burning Man, for example, does like socioeconomic levels for tickets, right? Like based on your income is how much your ticket is going to be. Like, I wonder if there's a future in trail running where something like that exists, because we always say that like, oh, well, running is like the most accessible sport, but it's really not, especially these days, because running shoes are like $180 each and they last like 300 miles. Like, if you want to run a race, you have to buy nutrition, and those are like $3 a gel, and you have to have so many of them. It's not that accessible of a sport. And so in a country like Mexico, I imagine like if you heard somebody say that, you would just be like, what a joke. Like, don't even tell me that.
No. Yeah. I feel like that would be beautiful, what you just said, and comes to my mind like this course that I just took. It has nothing to do with trail running, but the way of paying for the course, they have this huge outline that's like, if you are from like Europe or the US, and then they have like a different like outlines, like if you're a stay-at-home mom, if you like, you know, like, and there's different prices for each individual answer. And then it's like, if you're from Africa, if you're from Asia, if you're from Latin America, and like the same outlines, you know, if you have a stable job there, because like a stable job here gets paid really different than a stable job in Europe, right? So they have this different system, and it's realistic for every person and has the same opportunity to get into this course. So, I mean, it's kind of like utopian to think this, I think, at this moment, but wouldn't that be so beautiful to like have a real community where everyone can be involved? And then you would be able to have like, you know, this people like Quechua people like from Peru in the middle of the Andes come compete, and like I'm sure there's some like really fast and powerful people that are all day moving in the mountains there, and we just will never see them because there's no way they will pay for that.
Yeah, I appreciate you having this conversation with us, because I know that I followed you on Instagram since I met you last year at Mont Blanc Marathon, and I know that this is something that's very important to you. So I appreciate it.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Well, we have to admit that you have been a very highly requested guest for our podcast. You have many, many fans, and you now also, Black Diamond is clearly a fan of you because you are now partnered with them. And so we are just curious how that relationship began, and how stoked are you? I feel like that is such a great partnership for you.
Thanks. Well, thanks, Dani. I'm very humbled by the fact that people have been asking to have me here. Well, actually, my relationship with Black Diamond started thanks to my friend Hillary Girardi. She's one of the best sky runners in the world. She just recently broke Emily Forsberg Mont Blanc ascent and descent record. And when I went to Europe, she just super nicely messaged me after Dolomites and said like, hey, let's go run together. And we met, and it was like an instant great friendship. We got along on so many things outside of running too. And I was telling her I was, wanting to change brands because I wasn't getting any real support. And she introduced me to Black Diamond, and we had this 2-hour conversation. Mostly it wasn't even about running. It was just about who I was, like what was like what I wanted to do with my life. And we just clicked. And it's a brand that it's more mountain brand. Like they don't really have much trail running things yet. We're working on it. But what I like about them is that they're really interested about just like making sure the things they design are like hand in hand with the mountains. So like instead of taking from the mountains, like adding something, which is really difficult in this like consume-based society. But we have like very like often meetings, equipment, and most of the meetings are like, okay, how can we make sure that we have sustainable and good quality clothes? So for me, that's a very important conversation to have. Like if we want to keep doing the sport that we're doing, it takes place in the mountains. So we have to make sure that we're not having like this negative impact on them. And part of our clothes and gear is a big decision to make on how we want to take care of them. And I really appreciate that Black Diamond's taking a step towards that. Like that's also part of the reason they decided not to do certain things, because they were like, you know what? Yes, we want to make shoes, but does the world really need more shoes? No, I don't think so. Okay, let's just focus on backpacks, So I was like, whoa, I cheers for that, for taking that decision. And also they don't really care if I race. They're like, well, if you want to race, do you want to race? Yeah. Well, okay, cool. Like if you also want to do like personal projects, that's cool. So they're very chilled people, and they're also mountain people. Like sometimes I even have trouble like getting hold of Adam, who's the athlete manager, because he's been like rock climbing all weekend. And so it's cool to be with people that share the same passion.
That's awesome. It sounds like, yeah, I agree with Dani, like, especially knowing that you are the daughter of mountaineers, you're a sky runner, like Black Diamond just seems right up your alley. I love it.
Yeah, I'm happy. Thank you.
So we're going to switch gears a little bit to Skyrunning Masters and the end of the Skyrunning season before we wrap up here. And so Dani, do you want to go through the rankings a bit and talk about it with Karina?
Yeah. So right now you are fourth. Iris and Clementine are currently tied for first with 280 points. It seems like it's 100 points for first place, 80 points, and it kind of goes down per each race. Iris, who we both know very well, who has also done many Golden Trail World Series races. And then Emeka Clark, who I believe is Canadian. You've raced her a couple times as well. So there is one more race before Sky Masters, which is the Lausanne Sky Race. And so we were curious if you are going to that, or if you're saving up and going to the final, or if you're just ending your season already and you're like, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah, well, the points in sky running, they go, so there's two different kinds of races. So there's like Premier Sky Race and Sky Race. So Premier Sky Race is a sky race that is really, really technical. So they've chosen, the ones I've done are all Premier Sky Races. And then the ones that are just Sky Races are not as technical. So they give more points if it's like the Premier than the normal one. And yeah, right now, well, like they also take your best 3 races. So for me, I also try to take care of my environmental footprint, which is the reason I just took I spent like almost 3 months in Europe instead of going back and forth. But so right now I'm not doing the last one, the Louisiana one. And well, I'm just waiting for the I will go back in October for the Limones Sky Masters final. I know it will be very difficult, like to get first place because of Clementine and Iris in first place. Like I think like I don't know, something would have to happen for me to get first place because of the point system. But still, I still want to go. It's a beautiful race, Limone. It's a race that I really, really want to go do. So I'm excited to see everybody there and just finish my season there, no matter what happens with a huge party by the lake.
So, because even Dani and I, when we tried to explain the way that skyrunning worked at the beginning of the year, like neither of us had participated, so we were even a little confused. So it sounds like, based on what you're talking about with the final, your points still matter in the final. Like it's not like you go in ranked, but it's kind of wiped clean and then you guys just race in a final race. Like that final counts towards the points that you already have.
Yeah. In the final gives you double points.
Okay.
So in the Premier Sky Race, you get like 100 points if you're first place, 80 if you're second, like what Dani just said. And in the final, you get double. So you still have like a chance. Like even if right now I'm in fourth, I mean, Clementine would have to get like seventh or something if I wanted to win it, right? But like you can still have a chance there. Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. So what are your goals for Sky Masters then, if it's not totally to win? What are you going into? Kind of where's your head at?
Yeah. Well, like honestly, right now I'm feeling strong. Last year I had been struggling with anemia and like I have an autoimmune disease and I had been struggling with a lot of pain from that. I have spondyloarthritis, which is a kind of arthritis in the lower back and on the hips. And I had been in a lot of pain. Like when I met you, Dani, I was like I could barely walk and it was horrible. So, but this year I've been feeling a lot better and I feel really well. So I think if I keep training and taking good care of my nutrition and not like fatiguing or anything, I would definitely love to podium at the Sky Masters final. And well, yeah, I think that would be like a cherry on top.
Well, we believe in you and we're excited to see how it goes.
Yeah.
Thanks,
do you
guys.
know if Hillary and Marcella and like Lindsay Webster are going?
Yeah.
Cool.
Everyone's going.
Love it.
Yeah.
That is gonna be such an incredible race. And kind of just to take us to the end here, do you know that course at all? Have you raced it all?
Yeah, actually in 2017, I got this crazy idea to go do it. And recently Skyrunning Instagram posted a video of Kilian Jornet going like downhill insane on that course. And they put a little tag that said, like if you came to do Limona Sky Race because you watched this video. And I was like, yeah, definitely. that was me. I saw that video of Kilian going downhill like that. I was like, oh my God, I want to go do that. And in 2017, I was like totally not in shape, but like I raced it and it was a brutal and beautiful course. Like it's so beautiful. So I kind of know the course and I'm excited to, now that I'm in a completely different stage of my life, could just go actually race it.
I'm going to have to link that video, I feel like, so that other people feel
the same,
like they watch it.
It's insane. It's like he's going down a flat road and it's like this technical, like arete thing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. The things Kilian does is, as we all know, are just insane.
Yeah.
But the same with Karina. I see downhill videos of Karina. I'm like, how that is insanely amazing.
Yeah. I think it was the race that you most recently kind of posted about. Like, it looked like you were literally just throwing yourself down this scree field and these men are like holding on to ropes and you're having to get around them. So you just like bound past them.
Yeah, so incredible.
Yeah, and I'm so little, and it's really funny to watch it.
I know sometimes I want them to I don't know if it's I think it's a drone most of the time because you guys are so high. I want the drone to wrap around you guys sometimes to also show, the other side of what it is that you're on, because they're mostly
what they're seeing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would be great.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when I got to that screen, I was like, whoa, okay. I'm just gonna have to I remember before the race, I was looking at the Strava on Strava, the course and the different segments. And there was a segment that just said crazy downhill. And I thought it was this one. And it was a negative 90% incline. I was like, what? No way. And when I got there, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it literally is jumping off this thing.
Oh my God, that's literally my nightmare.
Well, you made it look graceful and fun.
Thank you.
Well, Karina, it has been an absolute pleasure having you here today. Any final thoughts, thank yous, etc.?
Well, no, thank you guys for making this wonderful podcast. I love listening to it. I think also it's been a pleasure being here. Your questions have been amazing, and your comments and everything. I feel like it's been a really fun and enlightening conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And if you don't follow Karina on Instagram, go give her a follow. We'll put a handful of things in the show notes this time around. And we can't wait to see you at Sky Masters.
Yes, good luck.
Thanks. Yeah, well, thanks, and good luck to you guys and all of your projects as well.
Thank you. This has been the Sub Hub, brought to you by Free Trail.
Brought to you by Free Trail.
Just a reminder for you guys that this episode is brought to you by Never Second. Check out the show notes for a link to their website, their Instagram page, and use code SUBHUB25 at checkout to get 25% off of your purchase. That's SUBHUB25.